Most of us think of the forest as peaceful, quiet, a place to escape the noise of cities, to breathe and to be alone with nature. Sure, it can get spooky after dark, but we tell ourselves it's just animals, just trees creaking, or just your imagination running wild. But then there are the stories, the ones that don't sound like imagination, the ones where people hear whistling, and never any explanation. Because birds don't whistle like that, and wind doesn't move with rhythm. And no normal person is out there, in pitch-black woods, slowly whistling the same tone over and over again. Dozens of Reddit users, people with no connection to each other, have posted about this, from the Appalachians to Pacific Northwest forests, from people living near the woods to campers and others. They describe it almost identically. Others swear they saw shapes in the trees right after. A few say they never went back to the woods again. Tonight, we're diving into these real accounts, and by the end, you might think twice before walking into the woods after dark. The first account comes to us from a Reddit user named Delinquent Borrower from the subreddit r/backwoodscreepy, titled Whistler in the Woods.
Where I live, we have had relatively few COVID cases. There were almost none at all back in the fall. Because of that, although we were still living under certain restrictions, we had more public health sanctioned freedoms than many other places. For example, at the time we were permitted to share our social bubble with one other household and travel within our region. My family and our fellow bubble family decided to take advantage of this by going on a fall getaway. We rented 2 side-by-side cabins in a beautiful waterfront wooded area and had a lovely relaxing weekend. Although there were other cabins nearby, most were not occupied, and we saw no other people, though we did hear a dog barking a few times, somewhere not far off. On our final night there, my son decided to sleep in the other cabin with his bubble siblings. Around 11 p.m., he called over, asking for some forgotten thing. It was a very dark night, and there were certainly no streetlights in the deeply wooded cabin area. So I grabbed my flashlight and walked the short distance to the neighboring cabin to deliver whatever it was that he needed. On the walk back, I heard a whistle. It was a very human-sounding whistle, exactly the kind of whistle one makes to call in a dog. It sounded very close, but shining my light around, I saw nobody. I heard it again, and assumed someone was whistling for the dog we'd heard earlier, so didn't think much of it. A short time later, another call came from next door. My son couldn't settle, and wanted to come back to our cabin. This time, my husband and I both walked over, collected our child and his stuff, said goodnight to our bubble family, and walked back. We heard the same whistle again, several times. It seemed to be on the dirt road ahead of us, moving gradually away. My husband commented that the dog must have gotten loose, and the owner was out looking for it. Inside our cabin, we continued to hear the whistling, coming at irregular intervals of maybe 2 to 4 minutes. Still not thinking much of it, my husband climbed into the loft to go to sleep, while I started to pack for the trip home the next day. Our son was sleeping in the little room on the main floor to the left of the front door, and the small window in his room was cracked open to let in the unseasonably warm night air. I was standing by that window, quietly gathering his scattered things, while the whistle once again drew closer. But this time, the next one was very close, and incredibly loud, as though the whistler was just outside my son's window. The blind was down, but I was sure someone was on the porch right outside. I leapt to the front door, flung it open, and threw on the porch light, ready to tell off some prankster on our doorstep. Nobody was there. I grabbed my flashlight and took a few steps out past the circle of light, then thought better of it and retreated inside. I locked up the cabin, closed and latched all the windows, and lowered all the blinds. If someone was creeping around outside our cabin, I didn't want them looking in at us from the darkness. Deciding that I did not want to leave my sleeping son downstairs by himself, I settled on the sofa with a book. The whistles continued. Between each one, I would convince myself it was just a bird or an animal, only to hear it again and be certain that it could only be a human sound. The irregularity of it and the slight variations in pitch and tone also told me that it wasn't something mechanical or electrical or automated. Around 1:30 a.m., my husband suddenly got up and started to get dressed. I asked him what he was doing. "I'm going out to find whoever that is and ask them why they've been whistling for hours," he said. I was horrified. My husband is a pretty big guy, and I was as curious as he was, but I also felt deep in my bones that it would not be safe for him to go outside that night. I insisted that he go back to bed, and thankfully he did. I sat vigil, listening to the intermittent whistles for at least another hour, until finally I dozed off on the sofa. When I awoke, it was morning. The sun was peeking around the blinds, and the whistling had stopped. I cautiously peered outside, half expecting to see some sort of evidence of a nighttime intruder, but there was none. A little while later, we wandered next door, coffee mugs in hand, to get our friend's take on the mystery whistler. Amazingly, they had not heard a thing, despite the fact that the sound was so clearly audible in our cabin and would have passed right by them. We couldn't understand how they had not heard it. At checkout, I asked the woman at the kiosk down the road about it, but she just looked at me strangely and said she didn't know what it could have been. When I got home, I searched for audios of bird calls common to the area, and then ones not common to the area, and we still don't know what we heard that night.
The second story is from another female user. Certain Intention 594 take from the subreddit r/skinwalkers. The following account is her story. This is a true story.
About 2 years ago, my boyfriend at the time and I decided to go on a hike right before the sunset, which, yes, sounds dumb, but it's something we had done multiple times before with no issues. There was something about the eeriness of the woods at night that I liked, not so much my boyfriend thought. To start our hike, we had to go through really tall plants and bushes. We were practically in the middle of nowhere. About a mile into the hike, we came across some abandoned structures and sat down to take a breather. I'm not sure exactly what my boyfriend has said to make me do this, but as a joke, I whistled and said, "See, nothing whistled back. We're alone." Not even 20 seconds after saying that, we heard a whistle. It was a bit of ways from us, but still too close for our liking. We immediately started booking it in the opposite direction of the whistle and didn't look back. After running for as long as we could, we realized we were lost. We wandered around for about 10 minutes before we stumbled across some train tracks that led back into town about a mile or two down the way. It's important to note that these tracks had thick woods lining both sides. The right side is where we came from. We got to the point where we could see the lights from town, maybe a quarter to half a mile away. Down the tracks a little bit, we could very faintly see the outline of what looked to be a deer coming out of the right side of the woods. It stopped in the middle of the tracks and just stood there. I attempted to shine my flashlight. Note, this flashlight was pretty dim. It was a random one found in the back of the junk drawer. On it, but as soon as I lifted my light up, it fled. Now, I say fled because ran would not be an accurate way to describe the way it moved. The best way I can describe it is that it looked like it had 4 broken legs, and its body was very low to the ground, yet it had unbelievable speed. It almost looked like a bent and twisted monster out of a horror movie. I shined my light into the woods to the left of us, as that's where it had ran, and when I did, I saw 2 glowing eyes that looked to be at least 10 feet in the air. My boyfriend said, concerned, "What is that?" in a very concerned tone. I told him, panicked, "I don't know. Don't look at it, just run." We ran and ran until eventually we reached town and walked back home. This happened about 2 years ago, and I've tried to come up with logical explanation after explanation of what I saw that night, and still to this day I can never find a solid, logical answer other than it being something paranormal. I refused to believe what I had seen for a long time, but I know what I saw, and I know I'm not crazy, as there was another person that witnessed the same thing as me. My boyfriend never spoke of it again and refused to speak about it when I would talk about it. I never went hiking at night after that day.
These are not the only encounters that were documented or uploaded to platforms like Reddit. There are numerous accounts of encounters with whistles from forests all around the world, and the stories are not random at all. The stories are often quite similar, and always mention the same type of phenomenon, such as the appearance of weird cryptids or animals after hearing a whistle, or the whistle being heard from every direction, leading to confusion. So, what are these whistles? And where do they come from?